Does morality actually have to be objective in order for us to have morality? Does it have to be out there in order for us to have it and exercise it? I don't think so. Why did Sam take on the task of attempting to make morality objective, or to show how there can be an objective secular morality, whenever a theist-based morality is based on preference itself, the preference to appease God? There could exist people that don't have that preference to appease God. And so that reveals that the theist-based morality is all about preference. Now, eventually, along the way, Sam felt the need to take on the task himself of showing that there can be a secular morality that is that can be objective. But why bother? I'd like to propose a foundation for a secular morality, while keeping in mind that to have morality, it doesn't have to be objective. It doesn't have to exist out there as a some kind of objective truth of nature. The first thing to recognize is that humans objectively exist. You might say, well, I don't know if you exist, or I don't know, solipsism, whatever. But objectively, consciousness objectively exists. You know that you're having an experience right now. I know I'm having an experience right now, to be or not to be. The mere fact, as Sam points out, that we can question whether we exist or not proves that consciousness exists. Whether there's just one consciousness, and that would be just you, or from my perspective, just me, consciousness objectively exists. And so experience objectively exists. And so it follows that all types of experience objectively exist. And so preferences exist. I have preferences, I exist, objectively exist. And so my experiences are something that objectively occur. They objectively exist. And so my preferences they objectively exist. And so my preferences to not have certain experiences exist as well. This is true for everyone. We all have the preference of avoiding certain experiences. So by framing it this way, certain experiences, this avoids saying I want to avoid, everyone wants to avoid pain, because the truth is some people like pain. So whenever I say it's more all-encompassing whenever I say we all want to avoid certain experiences. Even people that are sadomasochists want to avoid certain experiences. And so whether or not morality objectively exists is irrelevant, because our desires our preferences to avoid certain experiences exist. As I pointed out, we exist, and our consciousness exists. Therefore, the contents within our consciousness actually exist. I'm having thoughts right now, and they actually exist, but they're not in a physical sense, of course. But I'm subjectively experiencing these thoughts. Those thoughts objectively exist. I am objectively having this thought or that thought. And we objectively, everyone has things that they want to avoid. This is true. This is objectively true. And this is what I believe secular morality can be based on. It doesn't need to be objective. It 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 can just be based on objective truths. The fact that we exist and our thoughts are actually happening. You are actually having thoughts right now, objectively. This can be stated as a fact that you're thinking right now. So your consciousness is something that is occurring in the universe as a matter of fact, and it is a matter of fact that you have preferences, and it is a matter of fact that you want to avoid certain experiences. And I believe that this can be the basis for a secular morality. So morality doesn't have to be objective in order to have morality, to act morally because of our preferences, to avoid certain experiences. So this is where generic subjective continuity comes into play, and why we should treat other people well. Although I agree with Sam Harris's points about, you know, because the consensus would be to maintain a civilized society, a society where the avoidance of certain experiences is what guides how we act in the world. So, yes, I agree with Sam that it makes sense to lock up certain individuals, psychos and whatnot, that won't adhere to the morality of the majority, because those individuals, they have different preferences. They have desires that can encroach on other people's desire to avoid certain experiences. But to provide a good reason to treat others well, I think we should look to generic subjective continuity. This is something that Sam Harris has adopted in his worldview, that he seems to accept as true for what happens after death. And if generic subjective continuity is true, then it provides us with a very good reason to be good to one another. Sam Harris discussed generic subjective continuity in his podcast episode, The Paradox of Death, where he discussed the naturalist philosopher Tom Clark's essay, Death, Nothingness, and Subjectivity, where Clark coined the term generic subjective continuity. And so I suggest reading that essay, and I've made many videos on generic subjective continuity, but I feel I should explain it here. So just imagine a universe where no one exists, but then at some point a sentient organism comes to exist. And so just as it was the birth of a life that caused you, the birth of a life would cause a life to follow this non-existence, instead of there being nothingness. So this organism, this one and only organism here in this otherwise empty universe, would be the life that is, to borrow the antinatalist language, it would be imposed, as opposed to your life, the life that's watching this right now. Because we have to recognize that all we are lives in a generic sense. You're a life, I'm a life, my cat's a life, my dad's dog's a life, my parents are both lives. Everyone you know is a life. Each individual is an individual life in a generic sense. If you remove everyone's names, uh, imagine you were born but you were never given a name. You're just another life. That, in this empty universe, if a life comes to exist, then there is consciousness, and there is no lack of consciousness. There is no you in a peaceful state of oblivion or a black void or some kind of endless non-experience that is somehow protecting you or blocking this one and only experience consciousness that does exist. That instead it would just be this experience, because there is experience. There is no lack of experience. And so Tom Clark, in his essay, goes through this thought experiment, which helps people to better understand what he means by generic subjective continuity. And Sam Harris shortened it in his episode, the Paradox of Death episode. Sam uses instead, in this shorter version, he says, just imagine you wake up and you eat breakfast. You have, let's say, eggs and some potatoes, whatever, for breakfast. But then, some kind of futuristic surgeon or whatever just changes you throughout the day, and eventually, you start to believe that you had something else for breakfast, not eggs. You believe you had a bowl of cereal or something. And you just keep getting changed until the person that originally existed no longer exists. Or you could look at it like this: you go to sleep tonight, and tomorrow you wake up with amnesia. You have no memories whatsoever. And so you start to obtain new memories. So it's as if the person that went to sleep has, in a sense, died. It's like a mini death, or it's like a pseudo death. Yet there is a continuity of consciousness, and the person that went to sleep, the you that went to sleep, didn't fall into some kind of black void or anything. There's the only experience that came after you falling asleep. The period of time you're asleep is skipped over, as we all experience every night that we go to sleep. So that person didn't fall into a black void, but there's this continuation of experience. There's no non-experience for that person that went to sleep. Instead, the only experience that follows their mini death is the experience of this new person waking up, this person that has no existing memories. And so, in Tom's thought experiment, a person is radically changed via this futuristic surgery, changed so much that the original person should be considered dead. The person or the thing, whatever it might be, the creature that wakes up, is no longer recognizable as the person that went to sleep. Sort of like in the movie The Fly with Jeff Goldblum, how there's this transformation from the beginning of the movie. He's just this he's this scientist that has all these characteristics and stuff, but because of the experiment, because of his transportation device, he gets there's a fly in the device, the transportation unit, and so he accidentally splices himself with this fly, and throughout the movie there's this transformation to, and we eventually get to the point where uh, it's no longer the original character. There's this creature, this fly, sapien fly thing that is no longer the original character. And so, like what I said, you didn't exist, but then it was merely the birth of a life, in a generic sense. It was merely the birth of a life that caused you to exist. And then this life was given a name, and then the ego began to develop. And so the birth of a life is what caused this experience. And so, had you not been born, instead of this life, it would have been some other life, because other lives were born at the time that you were born. So if you were never born, because other lives were born, it would be one of those lives instead of this life. There would not be a lack of experience. As long as there's consciousness provided by a brain, or maybe even some sort of technology that is responsible for consciousness, as long as there is conscious awareness or experience somewhere in the universe, then your lack of existence wouldn't do anything to impede that experience from being what's experienced, as opposed to there being no experience. So experience would be imposed either way, whether it's uh, imposed via the brain that's currently watching this video, or some other brain that comes to exist. And so what this means is that after you die, there's going to be yet another life. It's in a completely naturalistic, materialistic sense. Because there will literally be lives after you die, not an afterlife. Uh, working within the worldview of naturalism, framework of naturalism. So there will literally be lives after you die. At least here on Earth, we know that lives will be born and will exist after you die. And so death will be followed by one of those lives, one that either exists currently. If you were to die right now, the generic subjective continuity could result in the conscious experience of an elephant that currently is alive right now somewhere on the planet, one in a zoo, or one in Africa somewhere, or India, wherever. And so what this means is, if the conscious experience of being an elephant comes after your death, wouldn't you want that creature to be treated well, with kindness and respect, etc., as opposed to the experience that comes after death being an animal that is mistreated, or a human that is mistreated, or living a terrible life? So this gives us very good reason to be compassionate and kind towards others, because your death will be followed by another life if generic subjective continuity is true. And if naturalism is true, if brains are responsible for consciousness, then generic subjective continuity is true. And Sam Harris recognizes this. So it's a shame that Sam didn't bring this up in his discussion with Alex, because Alex often brings up death in his podcasts and debates with other people. It's a topic he's pretty interested in. So that was a big disappointment that Sam didn't bring it up. But at the end of the podcast, Sam did say, until next time. So hopefully they eventually discuss generic subjective continuity. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and see you next time.